the actual HTML code that we did last week. So this is our HTML page. Okay, we see that essentially what it is a bunch of text marked up with something we call an HTML tag. Okay, and what happened is the tag and the text form together to create an element, an HTML element. Okay, that's something, not an element like fire and water. I mean like a part of the page that you can segment. Okay, and you'll see when we get into CSS today and later on in JavaScript, you'll see why that's important. Okay, so we learned that, so our outermost tag, our tag that encompasses everything else in our HTML document, is our HTML tag. Right? That makes sense. Remember that what the pairs of tags are saying is anything inside that tag is whatever the tag represents. So in this case, it's an HTML document. So anything between HTML and HTML is HTML. Okay. Same with the next level of tags was our head tag. Right. Anything that goes in the head tag will not appear on the page. So we technically, even though we entered in a title, it doesn't appear on the page. It appears at the top of the application window. That's different. Okay? So remember, anything inside the head tag is part of the head. Right? And then the next biggest one was the body. Right? So everything inside the body tag is part of your web page body. Okay? And we looked at a couple of different tags. We looked at the P tag. We looked at the H tags. We looked at the anchor tag. Right, that creates our links. We looked at our image tag. We looked at unordered and ordered list tags, and we also we finished off with tables. Okay. Okay. So if you're not, each week is going to build. So if you're not perfectly comfortable with that stuff, then come ask me for help. Or the best way to do this is to do these things, to actually practice it. Okay? So today we're actually going to start from the file that we used last week. Okay? Okay, so any questions about any of the tags we looked at, about maybe file handling, directory structure? Any questions? Okay. Good. So, today what we're going to do is we're going to introduce a new technology. Okay, and it's called CSS, which stands for Cascading Style Sheets. Okay? So, with the HTML, that was sort of like the frame of a house. Right? When you build a house, the framers come in and they put up just wood, right? And they rough out the house. Okay, so they make the foundation. This is where kind of the boundary of the house is going to be, and then this is where the basement is going to be. Then maybe they put a floor, and then they put up walls, and they kind of put they make different rooms. Okay, so that's sort of what we're doing with HTML in a way, right? Is we're setting up the frame of our web page, right? You could consider maybe these P tags are kind of like our little rooms in our house, right? And maybe this H tag, that's like our foundation, right? That surrounds our everything, okay? Now, obviously, you can't just live in a framed house. It's not finished yet, right? There's a lot there, but you can't live in a framed house. It looks terrible. It's non-functional, right? That's basically what you're going to get if you only use HTML. You're going to get an empty frame of a house or an empty frame of a web page. So, all the pieces are technically in place, but, no one wants to use this. Why? Installing updates. No one wants to use a web page with only HTML, just the same way no one wants to live in a house that has, no windows or doors. Okay? So, what we're going to do now is we're going to start putting on the doors, the windows. We're going to be putting on the bricks around the house. We're going to put on the roof. We're even going to put flowers around the house, right? Make it look nice, okay? And basically make it livable, okay? The house that is our website today. Okay, so CSS is like the finishing. I'm not a construction worker. I'm not sure what you call the section after you frame the house. But that's, so they're putting in the drywall, they are finishing the floors, putting the hardwood down, painting, everything like that, making it look nice. Finishing of the house. Okay? And then later, let's continue my metaphor here. Later on, we're going to learn about JavaScript, and that's like the electricity of the house. Once you have JavaScript, now you can watch TV, you can run your washing machine, you can charge your electric car if you have one of those. Okay? But for now, we've learned how to do this. We've learned how to frame a house, and now we're gonna finish it off, the structure. Okay? Okay. So let's go back to our HTML page here. So there are two ways that we can embed CSS code. So CSS is just some more code that we're going to write. It's in a different format. It doesn't look anything like HTML. Okay? So there are a couple of ways. So basically, the way CSS works is first we select an element or elements. Okay, remember I said when we combine a tag with whatever inside, we get an HTML element. So with CSS, we're going to select those elements, and then we're going to set a property, or not a, or many properties of that element. Okay. So for example, let's say if we wanted our P tag. Let's say we wanted all of our paragraphs to have purple text. We can do that with CSS. Okay, so what we would do is we would select our P, our paragraph, and then we would set the color to be yellow or purple, whatever it is. Yep?
Would you be able to do that with HTML too? Just with HTML?
Very, very basic. So, for example, there's like a bold tag that you can use. What else can you do in HTML? There's a center tag.
But could you change the color with HTML?
No.
Okay. Because I know you can set like a different color, like almost like highlighting it. Change the color that way, but I don't know.
You know what? I'm not going to bet $1 million on this. I've never ever done it, and you should never ever do it. I guess so. For example, like in table, I remember when I showed you in table, I was turning on the border, right? Things like that. So yes, you can do a little bit of styling in HTML, but you should never ever do it. You want to maintain separate structure from style, right? You want that different, because look at it this way, and this will become even more clear once we start working on multiple files. But when you go to a web page, the style is for all the different pages pretty much the same, right? You go to Facebook, it all looks the same, right? All the links are styled the same, the background color is the same. So you might have different pages with different structure, but the style is the same. So if you separate them, you can have the style in one place and apply that style to many, many different pages, right? That's why you want to separate structure from style. Okay? Okay. So see, in our remember yesterday I was sort of asking you, last week I was asking you silly questions like, is this paragraph tag above this H tag, or is this tag inside another tag? That's because I was trying to get you to realize that what we're doing is laying out the structure, right? This is above here and it's beside here, and right. So the structure is separate from the style. Okay. So there's two different ways that we can include CSS code into our HTML document. So the first way that I'll show you is the wrong way. So that way is to directly embed it into your HTML document. You can do that. So what we would do is we could either in let's see. Just get my examples here. So what we would do is in the head I suppose we could probably do it in the body as well. But what we would do is we would create, we would use a style tag. Okay. So what this means is anything between here and here is going to be CSS code. Okay. So let's take a look. Let's do one thing. Let's style our P. So we're gonna style something on our paragraph. So remember I said CSS, first we select an element. And so in CSS it's just as easy as P. That's my element. That's what I want. I'm going to do something to P. Now in this case it's all P. So any paragraph in your document is going to take on whatever characteristics we give it. So now what we do is we're going to use these curly brackets, braces. Okay? So anything between here and here will apply to this. Okay? So for example, we could say, what do we want to do? Let's change the color. Okay? So we have for inside the braces we're going to have property value pairs. So this is our property color, and then we have a colon, and then we can give it the color. Okay? So CSS allows us to use the actual names of the major colors. You can also use what's called a hex color. So if we go here, so what we can do is go here, and this will tell you, so for every color, there's a hexadecimal representation. Does anyone know, it's not really important, but does anyone know what the difference between hexadecimal numbers are and decimal numbers are? No? So if I say base 10 number system, does that mean anything to you? Base 10? Okay, so the number system that we use primarily is base 10. Okay? And that's arbitrary. That's totally arbitrary. So so see how like our number system sort of repeats after 10? Like we have 10 and then another 10, right? So we have 10, right? And then so we increase the second digit every 10 characters, right? The left digit goes up 1 every 10 clicks on the right. Okay? That's totally arbitrary. Computers use base 2, binary. Remember we already talked about this. Hexadecimal is base 15. So that means, so in base 10, we have, how many symbols do we have? We have 10 symbols, 0 through 9. Right? With hexadecimal, we have 0 through 9 plus A, B, C, D, E, F. Okay? That means, so with one digit, we can represent up to 15. Okay? So there are certain reasons in computing why we use hexadecimal. I'm not really going to get into it. It's not too important for this class. But that's why, so you'll notice FF0000. That's a number. That's a numerical number, right? So F is like 15. Right? So it's a big number. But it doesn't matter because all you do really, so let's say, oh, I want this color. So you go there, you get the hex number, you go back, you plug that in, end. Right? But I wanted to just give you a little background as to what a hex number is. Okay, so let's try this. So we've saved this, and now let's go back to our web page, and let's refresh. Oops, no, I don't want to go to Google. I want to do this. Okay, look what we got. See? Okay, so we could do the same thing. We could say blue, and it will change. Oops, wrong one. Okay. Or we can plug in that hex number that we got from the web. What was it? Oh yeah, that's just red. Let's pick one of these funky ones. Let's pick 66FF66. Can I copy this? Okay. 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 So someone tell me. Let's say I want to change the size, the font size of all heading 1s, of all the heading 1s, H1s. How might I do that, given what we've seen? How might I want to change the font size. So the property is called font size, font hyphen size, right? And let's say I want the value to be 32 pixels. And the element that I want to select is H1. So what would I type here? What would I type? H1? Yep. Good start. Oh, that's okay. Yep. Right? Because so I always like to close my structures before I fill them in, right? Because sometimes you might do this, bracket, and then you fill it in. But then what happens is you forget to put the other bracket, and then your CSS code breaks starting here, and you don't know why. Okay, so it's good practice. I think Dreamweaver will probably do it for you even to close it off right away. Okay, so the property was font size, so that's what I typed, font size. That's the property that I want to change. And then the value is, let's make it 40 pixels just so we can see it. Okay, so let's go back here. And, oh, wait, do I have a heading 1? Oh, I don't even have a heading 1. Okay, let's just change this to heading 1 then. What happened to my heading 1? Okay. So see how it's much bigger now? So let's even just change it quickly again, just so you can see. Let's make it 80. It's real big. Okay? Okay. So is everyone good up to here? Yes?
So how would you change all the fonts of all your headings? So like, would you do like H1, comma, H2?
Nope. Okay, think about it for a second. So one thing to remember is that, so remember the cascading part. Cascading, right? So what does cascading mean? It means it like continues on. So when you style a parent element, those styles are applied to the children as well. So try and answer your own question. So you want to change the font for the entire document, everything. So which element would you change the font size for? Which element encompasses everything that's displayed on the web page? The body. We can style the body. The body tag is a tag like any other tag. Right? So as long as, it won't, if we style the body, it won't, because we've overridden the H1 size, it won't restyle that. But let's try it. Let's set the body, and let's change the font size to, let's change it to 6 so that it's really small and then we can see. Okay. So all of our paragraphs have changed, okay, and our list, but not our heading, because it matters the order that we do it in. So if we got rid, let me see. I don't think actually. We'll have to see. No, it does too. It shrinks it down. So unless you, if it's overridden, then so these here override what's up here. Okay, so. If you want to style everything within a tag, then just style the parent. Now there are other ways to select in CSS, and we're going to go through those. So I don't know if we're going to get to the advanced ways. So you could, for example, you can select all the children elements of certain elements, for example, if you wanted to do that. But okay, so but before we get into that, I want to, so I've showed you sort of the wrong way of doing it, okay, which is embedding your style into your HTML file. So instead of doing that, what we're going to do is we're going to cut that. We're not going to put our CSS in our HTML file. We're going to separate style and structure. So we're going to go back to here. We're going to create a new file. So I went new file, right-clicked, new text document, and I'm going to name it stylesheet.css. Okay. Okay, so now we're going to drag this over into Note++ or Dreamweaver or whatever it is you're using. Okay. And we're going to paste in what we had before, except we're going to remove those. Okay, and we're going to, I removed the script tag, because this isn't HTML anymore. This is a CSS file. It's different. And I just want, how can I get rid of these? Decrease, Shift Tab. Okay. So notice I have, inside my braces, I tab in. Okay, that's for readability. Remember I said, as best as you can, you know, here I did it as best as I could, right? Sometimes it doesn't make sense or it's a little too difficult, but you should always have, every time you go inside an element, tab. Okay? Okay. So here we are. Now, what am I missing here? If I refresh this, why have we gone back to the old way? What am I missing? So I have my index file that was just the same as before, and I have my new style sheet file with my styles in it. But what am I missing? What's that? Yeah, I have to tell the HTML document where my CSS is located. Okay? So what we do is we use the link tag in the header tag. Right? Remember I said the head tag has a lot of administration-like stuff? This is one of those things, right? Where we're going to link in external files into our document. Okay? This is going to become more and more common. So now this link tag is a self-closing tag. So there's no extra tag. It's just one tag. And the first attribute is called rel, and we're going to tell it it's going to be a style sheet. Okay? And then we're going to tell it the type, and we're going to tell it that it's going to be text/CSS, and then we're going to give it the actual link, which was stylesheet.css. And then we're going to close off our link. Okay, so if you did this correctly, when we go back here, we should see the same thing that we had before we chopped out our code out of the inside of our page. Okay, so here are, just like with the image, there are a couple of points where you could go wrong. So one, your style sheet file may not exist. Okay, or two, this file name and this file name may not be exactly the same. Okay, it's case sensitive and they have to be identical. Every character has to be identical. So if it doesn't work, those are the two things I would check first. Okay? but let me know if you don't have styles. Yes. It's not working? No? Okay. Hang on. Let's figure it out. Okay. Okay. And let's see your file. So open up your, or let me see, what is the browser showing? Oh, yeah, it's working. Yeah, you have your green text. You're fine. You're good. Anyone else not have it? These are the things that I kind of hate as a developer. These little, like these link commands and stuff. You know, if you get just a little one character off, then nothing works, right? And then you can't focus on actually designing anything, right? You have to figure out what character is missing. You guys are having trouble? Yeah. Oh, right there. So right after there, put. And that should. So that was type, I think. Let's go back to the code. So remember, you have. So it goes attribute, then equal sign, and then the values are in quotes. So make sure that your link element, your link tag, is exactly as it shows here. Yes?
Sorry, can you just go back to your style sheet?
Sure.
I have something different.
Okay. That's fine. So Dreamweaver, you know, technically from our HTML, there's a little bit missing. Just some extra stuff at the top. It's not 100% required, but in order for it to be proper, you need it. So same with that. So you don't really need this, but it's just a little bit of extra code that says this is how this text file is encoded. So you could get away without having that there, but leaving it in if you need. Yep. Still no? Right there. So it gets to be like a game of Where's Waldo, right? You have to find where's the what are you missing? So right before text, yeah, put text equals type. Sorry, type. Anyone else not able to get that link together? Yep. Yep. Okay. Yep. Yep. Oh, that at the top should be just a body with no brackets. Yep. And that one too. Yeah. There. Okay. Try. See, CSS can be a pain. So, style sheets. Okay, go back to your direct folder. American spelling. That's American. There we go. Okay. Yeah. So we spell color in CSS like our neighbors to the south. Don't forget about that. Okay. Anyone else? Okay. So what we're going to do now is we're going to start exploring some of the properties that we can manipulate using CSS. Okay. So the first one, probably one of the more useful, is so we can set the background. Actually, before I get to that, I want to do one quick thing. And we talked about this last week, but I want to talk about it again because it's so, if you understand this, it almost, you almost understand CSS, okay? So remember that all HTML elements can be considered a box. Everything is a box. Box, 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 box. Everything. Your body tag, your A tags, your image tags, your P tags, all tags are boxes, okay? And if you know that, if you understand that in your mind, then doing CSS will just be so much easier for you, okay? So remember, all elements have these 4 properties and more, but they all have these at least, okay? So let's say for our P tags, they all have content. That's the space where the text is. Then we have padding. That's the space between the content and the border. And then we have our actual border, which can be any thickness. We can make it as thick as we want. And the margin is then the space between the outside of the border and the margin of the other elements around it. Okay? So I don't think we'll get in to do layout today. But when we do layout using CSS and HTML, we're going to manipulate these 4 things on our elements to get the layout that we want. Okay? So remember, everything is a box. And always just remember this box model. Okay? Okay. So, let's style. So first, to hammer home this that we are dealing with a box. Let's do some border stuff. So let's turn on the border for our P's, all P's. Okay. Let's turn on. So we'll say border hyphen style. Okay. And you know what? Actually, I'm going to switch to Dreamweaver because. This is sort of where Dreamweaver shines because it suggests to you all of your possible properties. Okay, and that's really comes in handy. Okay. Okay. So we're back here now. We're in Dreamweaver, and let's just let me drag my index over here. Okay. So what we can do. So in our P tag, we're going to set. So look right away. It gives us a list of all the properties that we want. So let's say you're thinking in your head you have a layout or a certain style that you want to show, and you're not quite sure what the CSS property is. Remember back to that Google flowchart that I showed you in the first day. What was the first step? Look for something that kind of looks like what you want to do, right? So if you want to change the border or something, we'll look through here for something that says border. Right? Okay, here we got border, and let's look down. So we have a couple of different things, right? Border style. Let's see, that's the one that we want. Border style. Okay, so we can pick that. Of course, we can just type it, but this comes in handy. And then here it gives us all the possible values that property can equal. So let's give it a solid style. And then let's make the border width, let's make it 5 pixels. Okay? So remember, pixels are the little dots on your screen. Okay? So pixels are an absolute measure. It does it so, 55 pixels means 5 pixels everywhere. There are some relative sizing units we can use, and I'll show you those in a minute. Okay? But let's check this out. So remember what I said about boxes. So look at our paragraph. Let's actually make the text a little bigger so we can see. This small text has outlived its usefulness. Oh. So we'll change that back to 12 just so we can not go blind. Okay. So notice, so now that we've turned on the border, it's so much more clear about how our paragraph is a box, right? And so remember, your boxes will try and take up as much space as they need, okay? So see how it tries to take up the entire, all of its parent element. So what is the parent element of this paragraph tag? What's the parent? The body tag, exactly. So it tries to take up the entire body tag unless we tell it otherwise. Okay? So let's do this. Let's look at... Okay, so what I'm going to introduce a couple of things here all at once. So let's look at... We're going to change the width. Okay? So we're going to change the width of our paragraph tag. So anyone care to hazard a guess as to the property name? To change the width. Width. Okay. Now, how wide do we want to make it? Let's make it 200 pixels. Okay. Now, let's go back to our page. And we're going to refresh. Whoa, look what happened now. So what has happened? We have now, so what we've done now is, okay, so remember that also your web page sort of flows from the top, like you read, right? So everything is left justified and sort of, everything tries to get up to the top corner. Everything is trying to run for that top corner, right? But this paragraph, he can't go anymore because the image tag is stuck. It's holding him there, right? But he wants to be in that top corner unless we tell it otherwise, okay? So, now notice also something else. Why is our paragraph longer now? Why is it longer, right? Remember before when it was, let's close this so I don't get confused. When we go back here, and if I take away the width, it's shrunk. So why is it? It's 3 lines versus however many it was in the other case. Why is that? Right. So the text will try and push out the box. Will try and push out of its box, kind of like when you freeze a bottle of Coke or something. And the water pushes itself right up through the weak spot, right? So what we've done here is we've made the size rigid. We've put boundaries on there. We said, no, you can't squeeze out of here anymore. You can't. And so what it does then is it'll try and push out wherever it can. And since we haven't given it a height limit, then it'll just expand to the height that it needs. Okay? We can change all of that. Okay, but we're just dealing with sort of the default behavior. Okay? And what we can do is if we want it to behave how we want it to behave, we can override that in CSS. Okay, so before we move on to anything else, so here I set it to be 200 pixels. So that is relative, or absolute. Okay? So see here, this from here to here, that's 200 pixels. Now if I take my browser and I shrink my window and I move it, let's say I move it over here. 200 pixels still. Anywhere it's going to be 200 pixels. On your screen it's 200 pixels. On your screen it's 200 pixels. Everybody's screen is 200 pixels. Okay, but what we want to do, I want to have a paragraph that is half the size of my page, the width, half the size of my width. How would I do that? Percentage, right? So instead of using px, that's an absolute unit, what we want to do is we want to use 50%. Now, what is that 50% of what? In this case, that's true, but not always. What's a more accurate way of saying that?
The size of the body of this page?
No, the size of its parent tag, its parent element. So if the body was, or if let's say you had a paragraph, let's say you had what we want to put in? I want to put. Oh, well, we didn't learn about div tags. Well, div tags are HTML elements, and all they is just a box. It's an empty box. That's it. So if you have a div tag that's only a number of pixels wide, and then inside the div tag you have a paragraph, it's going to take up half of its parent element, which is that div tag. Now, I can show you an example in a minute. But let's first look here, and let's refresh. Okay, so now notice that it's 50%. Okay, but here, watch this. Now look, what happened? Oh, magic, right? That's key, right? Why do you think that's important? That with web, when we develop in web, there are times when you do want to use absolute pixels, but why, for the most part, would we want to use a relative unit like percentage? Yeah.
So that if you're switching from, say, a computer to a mobile device, it'll squish.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, actually, for that, probably it's sort of like physics, where you get down to the smallest level, it no longer works anymore. So for mobile, it's so small that you kind of have to do a different design. But you are on the right track. So basically for different screen sizes, right? You guys have a wide screen. I might go home and I might have a square, just standard screen. And so you want your web. You don't want your page ever to side scroll. You don't want it. So if I do this, okay, 3,000 pixels, much bigger than the size of my monitor. Now look at this. We don't want that. Okay? So, let's say I'm the developer and my screen size is what would this be? Let's see here. 1024. So let's say I set it to be, 1,000, because that's what my screen is. And then so it looks fine here. Or it's even a little bigger still. So let's shrink this down. Okay, but now some poor sap with an old monitor, their screen is going to look like this. And now they have to side scroll on your web page, and that's not good. We don't want that. You want to limit scrolling as much as you. Vertical scrolling, not so much. It's not as bad. But horizontal scrolling, that's a big no-no. Okay? So generally what we want to do is use percentages rather than pixels, because it allows for what's called fluid layout, right? So remember I said all of your elements are trying to run up to the top left corner. So everything sort of flows left and down, right? So as you adjust your width of your browser, you want everything to sort of reflow very nicely, so that it doesn't, that it fits nicely within the boundaries of your browser width. Okay? So is everyone clear on the difference between a absolute and relative unit? Okay? Okay. And this, using relative, it's so important now, because there's just so many different types of screens. Now 4K monitors are starting to come out. So this monitor here, they have probably about 1,200 lines of resolution. So now they're going to have 4,000 lines. So that's quite a bit. That's a big jump. Okay, those are coming down the pipe. So again, your website has to work for the 4K monitor, and it has to work for the guy on dial-up on an 800 by 600 monitor. Okay? Okay. So what else should we do? Let's go back to our style sheet. So we looked at width. Okay, let's set our background for something. Maybe let's stick with our paragraph. So let's change this. Let's make this 90%. Okay? And let's change the background. Actually, let's change this to black so we don't go blind. And then, so now we're going to change the background color of our box, okay, which is our paragraph. So we can say background. Oh, why I keep? Oh, this is Dreamweaver. Background color. Okay, and then this is another reason why Dreamweaver is very, very handy, because instead of going to the web and finding the color and hex, we can just go here. Okay, and we can pick whatever we want, and then it will automatically put in the hex value. So let's pick this, whatever. You can pick whatever color you'd like. Okay, so now if we go back here, there we go. Hey, that looks not half bad. You can actually read it now. Okay. Now we can also, let's do something else. We can set the background image. We can set the background of any element to be an image. Okay. So what we have to do is, well, first we have to have an image file. So let's just use our sunset. Let's use our in here, our sunset photo. We'll use this one. Okay. So what we do is, let's make the body, because I noticed it's a pretty a lot of newish websites. They do that. They have an image, like Twitter. You go to Twitter. I haven't been to Twitter in a while, but last time I checked, there was a nice big image on the background. Or how do I just get to? Oh, I want to log out. How do I get just to the main? Is this me? How do I get out of this? What? I suppose here. This is like, see this? That's an image. Okay, but this isn't what I wanted to show you. I guess they've changed it since I last looked. Okay, but let's do it anyway. So we're going to say background image. Okay, and then it's a little more complex than some. Oh, actually, we can. I wonder if it'll do this. So if we browse, then no. You know what? That's going to be more work than it's worth. So let's just say we're going to say URL. Okay, bracket, close bracket. Right? Remember, I always like to complete my structures, and then inside the bracket, we're going to go quote, quote, and then inside the quotes, we're going to put in our file. Yes?
What happens if that web page ever disappears or gets changed somehow?
You mean the image file? What do you mean by the web page?
I guess I'm just confused by URL.
Oh, this just means, it's just sort of like, remember when we, for here. So URL means Universal Resource Locator, and you can have local resources. So this just says, look in the same folder where I am, I being the CSS file, go up one into images, and then look for the file sunset.jpg. Right? So let's save that and let's have a look. Woo. Okay, so now there are a couple of different, what we can do is, so you might not like this, how it repeats. Okay, we can actually change that. There's a couple of different, so oh, and I forgot a semicolon. Okay, so one thing we could do is we could just use a larger photo. So yeah, see, this one is very big, so let's try that. Let's sunset 2. Let's try that and see how that looks. Okay, so that's actually bigger. So you'd have to do, you'd want to play around with, again, just like how you change the size here. You want to make the size of the image roughly the display size that's going to end up being. Okay, but what we can do is let's put it back to the first one, and then what we can do. Question?
If I don't want to use the URL, I have the image inside my folder.
Say you have to use this. Yeah, yeah. So now we're going to say background repeat. Okay, and here we can set to no repeat. Let's see what that looks like. Okay, so that's just going to have 1 now. Okay, and that may or may not work for your style. Okay, let's try a couple of the other ones. So we also have repeat X, so that'll repeat on the X axis. Okay. We just want it that way. Or let's try round. I've never used round. Let's see what that does. Oh. Okay, I suppose that's the same as just repeat. Or maybe there's something different I don't notice. Okay, so okay, so let's, instead of changing the background, let's put a background image, let's say, in our paragraph tags. So how would I do that? Let's say I want to put, let's say this one here. Let's call this test. So what do I have to do here to make that a background image of my p tag? Yep. So I could just do this. I could copy this, and then I would go here, and what was it? What did I call it? Test.jpg. See now. Okay. See that? So obviously the image that we have there is too big, and we'd want to shrink it down. But that just gives you an idea of what we can do with CSS. Okay. Let's see here. Okay, background. Okay, one thing that's commonly done is, actually let's make these, let's make this bigger so we can see everything. And I'm going to make the color white now because we have a colored background and it's harder to see. So now we can see our text here. Okay. So where's our links? Where do we have links? So here's a link here. Okay. So this link is actually decorated with an underline. And a lot of modern designs take away the underline. It's a little old school. So we can do that by, so what we want to do is we're going to set the property of our anchor tag, right, A. And so we're going to set for our anchor tag, we're going to change the text decoration, and we're going to set it to none. And you can't really see it, but here, let me just turn off the background here. Get rid of this so we can see. Okay, so see now our link doesn't have, it's still a link, but it doesn't have an underline. Okay. So we can add text decoration. So maybe to our headings, maybe we want an underline. So we could add that. Oh, let's change this back to black. Okay. So remember, you can do anything with CSS as far as overriding default behavior. So when you style when you have an H1, it comes with a default size, a default color, a default everything, and you can just override it with CSS. Okay, so text decoration, that's one you'll need for your assignment. Okay, let's talk about fonts. Fonts are funny in that they're very easy to overuse, fonts. I think, like, you shouldn't try and make your site unique, or the main aspect of your site should not be the font, right? It should be very, even this font that is now, that's fine. It has the serifs. Does everyone know what a serif is on a letter? What's the difference between a serif and a sans serif letter? So serifs are these little ball things that hang off the edge. See that? Or they're seen on the end of the S. It's like a little wide. So that's a serif font. Sans serif font like Verdana doesn't have those. And usually, when I do web design, I usually use a sans serif font. It just looks a little more web friendly. So let's try that. Let's try just using some of the built-in fonts. So let's go into, let's change our body. And so what it's called here is font family. Okay? And then Dreamweaver gives us a nice list. So what will happen is, see, the thing with fonts is not everyone has the same fonts installed on their computer. So if you use there's a way around this, which I'll tell you in a minute, but if you use, let's say, a really specific font that you have installed on your computer, other people may not have it, and then it'll just default to whatever, to whatever they have. So in this case, that's why we have 2 here. So if you don't have Verdana, it'll go to Geneva. Okay? But let's try that now. Let's see what Verdana looks like. Okay. So that's largely, I would say that's a good portion. I don't have any data on this, but I'd say a good portion of the web uses this font, Verdana. It's pretty straightforward. And notice it's sans serif, so that you don't have those little flourishes at the end. Okay? It's just a little more web friendly, I think. Okay? So, but let's say, for example, maybe you do want to, for all these rules that I'm telling you, there's going to be countless instances where you should break them. So sometimes you may need a specific font. So how do we get around the problem of people not having fonts installed in their system? Well, what we can do is use something called web fonts. Okay? So Google, for example, hosts fonts on their site. So we can use any of these fonts by simply, all we need to do is, let's see, how do we get the quick use? So all we need to do is, does it give us a, yeah, all we need to do is add this little bit, okay, into our link, into our head. So I'm going to copy this, copy, okay. I'm going to go back to my HTML, and under here I'm going to put this, I'm going to put it above my style sheet. Okay? So this is another link, just like this is a link. This is a link to a local resource, and this is a link to a remote resource. Okay? So now Google is friendly enough, they tell us, so now we can, let's change it to this. So I'm going to go back to my CSS. I'm going to change the font family to this. Okay, so that is a web font now. That's guaranteed to work everywhere. Because what will happen is anytime someone visits this web page, it's going to hit this link and it's going to load the font from Google's page, from Google servers. Okay? So also there's another one really popular font that I don't use for its font abilities. It's called Font Awesome. And it is pretty awesome. And what it is it's a font for icons. Okay? So I think we can you can either download it to your site, or there must be a CDN link. Let's see. CDN. Okay. So what we can do, again, here's another link. So there are two options for working with things, resources like this. So number one, we could download, right? It's asking us to download a file, some files, and then we can include that in the same folder as our web page, or we can just link on the fly, right? We're going to link to someone else's server. Okay? So anytime you see this CDN, that means, so you'll see that if we get into jQuery later on, and for other frameworks, you can load resources from other servers. Okay? So we'll do that. Let's copy this. So I'm going to copy this link, and now I have Font Awesome installed on my web page. So now what I can do, let's go to their Getting Started page, is, let's see here, icons. So this font comes with a ton of these icons. Okay, see all these? Now, why would I want to use a font for icons? Why would I want to do that? Why not just use an image? No? Well, fonts are incredibly lightweight. Right? It's probably a hundredth of the data to send this to the browser versus sending a little graphic. It's much, much easier on bandwidth. So, for example, and icons are so important for usability. You should use these everywhere you can. So let's look at the bank one, for example. There's a bank icon. So now it's going to give us a little bit of HTML that I can just throw into my page, and then we'll get this icon. If this will load anytime. Okay, so here is, so I'll just do this. Copy this. Okay. And we're going to go back here, and let's say, well, where do we want this? Let's put it in the first part of our first paragraph. Oh, what happened? It did not work. Why not? Page source. Okay, it's in there. Oh, yeah, the link that it gave me is not exactly right. So it has // You have to add in, I'm not sure why they don't have this, http:/. Oops. Okay. Let's try it now. There we go. Okay. So that is very, very lightweight on your, like almost no bandwidth. Okay, versus maybe a few bytes or probably kilobytes, 10 or 20 kilobytes for a little graphic like that. Okay? So by using icon fonts like Font Awesome, you can add lots of graphics and your site will still be super lightweight. Okay? Because remember, right now we're all sitting in front of computers that probably are connected to some of the fastest internet in the country. Okay? Almost the world. Right? But not everyone has that. What if you're loading it on a phone? Right? It might be slow. So you gotta kind of design for worst case. Okay? Okay. So any questions so far about the general approach to CSS? How we The background? What's it doing? Oh, not showing? Okay, so remember the couple of things I suggested. So double check that the file name exists. Okay, go back to there. Go back to the images. Oh, it should actually appear in your paragraph. Go back to your browser, open it up in your browser. Go back. I'm not sure it looks okay. Go back here. Index, yeah. sure I'll have to when they come back. We'll figure it out after the lecture. Okay, so I want to show you something very important. So far what we've been doing is we select elements, and then we choose properties, and we choose values for those properties. Okay, but what if I don't want all of my paragraphs to be styled this way? What can I do? Okay, well, there are a couple of different things we can do. Okay, so in our HTML, in our code, what we can do, so notice this is sort of a little quirk of Dreamweaver that can be confusing sometimes. So see here, when I click on my index file, there's this sub-tab, because it goes in and it reads my links, and it gives me access here. But so you can access Style Sheet by either going here or here. Right? It's the same file, which I find a little confusing. But so I would try, if you can, just to use these top tabs rather than switching here. You can get a little. I don't really like that feature actually. Okay, so what we can do now is we can set an attribute of our elements that will differentiate it from other elements of the same type. And there are two main attributes we can use: ID and class. Okay? So usually by class, or no, not usually, what is meant by class is not like this class that we're sitting in, but more like a category. Like best in class, right? You know, when they give out car awards, they say this car was the best in class. They mean it was the best in its category. So what we can do is we can assign one or more elements to be a part of a certain class. Okay? So let's do that. Well, actually, and the other one that we use is called ID. And we usually use ID when we want to differentiate one single element. That's only it's the only instance of that element. Okay? So, you know, if I wanted to just make maybe one particular element a certain style, I would use ID. If I wanted to make, let's say, 3 out of the 5 of my paragraphs a certain style, I would use a class. And all the paragraphs I want styled, I would put that class in. Okay? So let's use ID first. So let's set up the P tag. Let's give it an ID. Okay? So we're going to say ID equals : and then in here we can put in anything. Anything we want. Actually, that's not true. It has to be alphanumeric, and there may be you probably can't start with a number or a symbol. But basically anything else goes. You could call this Bob. We could call this paragraph Bob. Okay? So let's stick with that. Let's call it, this is our paragraph, his name is Bob. So what I want to do is in my CSS file, I want to create some style, some different style only for Bob. Okay? So what I do is I use the hash symbol, and then I list the ID name, Bob. Okay? And then everything else works exactly the same. Okay? So now, rather than here, when we just list P, the element, we're accessing all paragraph tags. Okay? But here, we're accessing all tags of any type. So not just P, could be H, could be a table tag. We're going to style all tags with the class Bob, or the ID Bob. Okay? So let's make this color, let's make Bob green. Okay, let's go back now and we refresh. And now look at Bob. Now, but look, his brother here, Dave, he's still the same color. Okay, because we haven't overridden. Now, but also notice that the only thing different is that it's green. that the other styles, right? Because we styled all P's, right? So Bob is a P, so it'll take on all of these styles. But then we've said Bob is special. He has one extra and different. So this is going to override this one, okay? Because we've set it to override, okay? So now, so if we went to our HTML file and we moved the ID Bob, we moved him over into our H1 tag, it's going to do the same thing. Okay? So you see how it's not element type specific now. Okay? So, maybe let's say, for example, in a page you might want text that's alerting, right? That's red and big and says, "Look at me, look at me." So you might have a special class called highlight or something. And then anytime you want an element or a little bit of text to be highlighted, then you apply that class. Okay? Okay, now the other thing, so I used an ID. Okay? But let's say, so let's copy our paragraphs here. So I have 1, 2 paragraphs. Let's make 3 more. 1, 2, 3. So now we have 5 paragraphs. Okay? And let's say, it could be like a message board where, when you go to a message board, usually the starting thread looks a little bit different than the responses, right? Or you might have a blog post that's styled in a certain way, and then the comments are styled differently. Okay? So what we could do now is, so let's go back here to our CSS, and now let's create we're going to create a class. So I want, let's say every second we'll have one paragraph will be question, one paragraph will be answer. Okay? So let's make this paragraph, since it's first, we'll give it a class equals, quote, quote, we'll call this question. Because that's the question. We want to style our questions in a certain way. And now let's copy this and paste it in our second paragraph, but we're going to change this to answer. And now let's alternate question, answer, question, answer. So now we'll put here question, and then we'll put here answer, and then we'll put here question, and that's it. Okay, so let's go to our CSS now. And the way we use the number sign to indicate that we're styling an ID. Anyone care to guess what symbol we use for class? If you're a programmer, you might know. You guess? No? Dot. Okay? So now we can say dot question, and now the CSS part works the same way. Okay? So let's make the question, let's make that black. Or no, let's make it yellow, and then we'll copy this structure. We'll change question to answer, and now let's make yellow, let's make it pink. Okay? And let's see now. So now see how we've only styled in 2 areas. Okay? But look what we have. So now we have alternating styles. So really, when you want to style one thing, you use an ID. When you want to style many things, we use a class. Okay? So, any questions about that? Any questions about the 3 ways now that we know how to select elements? So we can select all elements by just naming the element, or we can select based on ID using the number sign, or we can select based on class using the dot. Okay? Okay. Let's see, what else haven't I covered Okay, let's. This will lead us into our layout lecture next week. So I think we'll probably end maybe 8:20 or so, and then you'll have the rest of the time for today's assignment, which has been posted. Okay, let's play around with the box model a little bit, because we haven't really done that. So far, we've only looked at the border. So we have the border width, and we've set that on our paragraphs to be 5 pixels. Okay, but now let's play around. Let's change the. What did we look at? Let's change the. Well, let's look back at our box model and see what our options are. Right, we have 4 things. So let's change. Let's start off by changing the padding. Okay, so remember that's the space between the inside of the border and the outside of the content. So let's try that. So let's all of our paragraphs. So you know, sometime when you look at your web page, and actually let's change these so it's not so. I always pick horrible colors. Let's pick blue, and what's another? Maybe purple is a little better. Okay. So notice how the text is right up against the edge. That looks a little funny. That looks odd to me. I want some space between my text and my border. So what can I do? Well, I can edit the padding. Okay. So padding is usually the types of things we want to use absolute units for. Like you wouldn't want to use like a percentage for padding, because it's going to look weird. Usually you want your padding to be, let's say 5 pixels. Let's see how that looks. Okay, so notice it pushed everything in a little bit. Okay, let's try it again. Let's do it. Let's try 10. That might look a little better. Okay, everything's pushed in a little bit more. Okay. Now also, I don't like how my or let's make it not 100%. Okay. But if we look here, I don't really. Oh, why is it? Oh, 100%. Let's make it just so it shrinks a little bit. 95. Oh, that's because no. Okay, so I don't like how it's right up against the edge here. I want some space. So how would we do that? Well, we would edit our margin. And let's make it 20 pixels. Let's try that. Okay. Looks a little better. Okay. Yeah, what else did I want to show you? Let me just check your assignment to make sure that I've covered everything. Let's see. Okay. So I think question?
Yeah, what is the difference between padding and margin?
Yeah, so let's look back at our. So padding is the space between the border and the content. But margin is the space between the edge of the border and the next element. So if you increase the margin, what it will do is it will space all the objects further apart from each other. Right? But if you increase the padding, what that does is it'll increase the size of your object, because now you've squished in the text. So now the object itself expands. But that, if you want to change the distance between elements, you adjust the margins. right? We'll look at that more in detail next week when we look at doing layout. So, so far we've been just playing, right? We haven't really been doing any, just been practicing with them. But next week we're going to actually make a website using everything we've done, okay? Okay, what was I doing? I was looking at the assignment to make sure that you know how to do everything. I'm going to show you a couple more things because CSS 3 has added in a lot of new things that make some things really easy that used to be difficult to do. Okay, so you're good for the assignment. I'm just going to show you a couple more things before we end. So one cool thing is now we have some interesting effects that we can do. So for example, we have some text effects. And this is new to CSS 3. So for example, let's do a heading. Let's take our heading 1, and we're going to set the text shadow. Okay? So we can set the color. Let's make it black. Okay? And then we can actually... Okay, and then what we can do, so let's see how that looks. Then we can adjust the offset of our shadow. Okay, so there is a shadow there, but now what we have to do is give it some offset. So let's say 5 pixels, 5 pixels. I wonder if that'll be enough. Okay, so see how, so the shadow starts by default behind the image, and then we moved it 5 pixels to the right and 5 pixels down. Okay, now we can see our shadow. Okay. So we can also, so see how our shadow is crisp? We can actually make it more diffuse. So if we add, let's say, 5 pixels in the third number here, then when we go here, you see how the shadow's a little, it's not sharp, it's not a sharp edge. Let's make it even more so we can see a little more. Let's make it 10 pixels. Okay. Pretty neat. Okay, let's do, what else can we do? Borders. So, you may have noticed, okay, I'm going to introduce a new tag today so that it's not totally new when we go next week. Okay, so remember I said div tags. Div tags are very important. What did I say div tags were again? They're just an empty box, right? So if I do this, div, this is inside the div. Okay? Basically nothing. Okay? It's just empty. So what we can do now is let's go to style. Let's give it an ID. And we'll call it, what should we call it? We'll call it div1. Okay? So now we're going to go to our style sheet. And so how do I reference an ID? What symbol do I use? Hashtag, right? And so what did I call it? Div1. And then let's turn on the border like we did with our paragraph. Okay? Just so we can see our empty box. There we go. Okay? So I wasn't lying. It is actually there. Okay? And we can do stuff with it. Okay? So, back in the day, let's say if I wanted a rounded border. So I don't want this to be square. I want it to be round. That used to be very, very, very difficult. You couldn't do it in CSS. So what you had to have done was create an image of a rounded border in Photoshop, chop it up, and then place each part of the image in different parts of a cell table. So you'd have to go into here, you'd have to create a table, kind of like this, and then you would shrink the edge here, and you would shrink this edge here, and you'd have a big like this. You delete this, and oh, you need one more row, basically above. And so this, your content would be in here, and then your border image, like your corner image, you would put here, and your other corner image you'd put here, and your other corner image you'd put there. It's basically a nightmare, okay? And it, it would never work, and it would look poorly. Okay, now what we can do is we can just say border radius, and then we give it a radius that we want it, how many pixels we want the radius of the curve to be. And there we go. So let's make it a little more. Let's make it 20. And let's put more text in here so you can see it. Go back here. Copy. Put that in here. Okay. So now we have our nice little border. And so see how my text is hitting up against that border. So how do I fix that? How do I make some more space so it looks a little nicer? Margin? Padding, right. So what do? I go here, I go to my style sheet, and I go to div 1, and I can say padding, say 10 pixels. There we go. Looks a little nicer now. Okay? So that's the border radius. We also have, again, I'm not even sure how you would do this before CSS 3. It would have been a nightmare. But we can create a shadow for our box. So we can say box shadow, and then it's similar to the text shadow. Okay? So 10 pixels, that's the offset. And then the next number is the how diffuse it is. And then we can set the color. In this case, dark gray. Okay? There we go. Now we have a nice little drop shadow there. Yes? Sorry? Too fast? Okay. So box shadow, I'll leave it there for a second. So did everyone does everyone have the additions I made to the index? So I added a div tag at the top of a page, and I added an ID called div1. Okay, so does everyone have that? Have this? So we have a div tag with a black border, with rounded corners, with a little bit of padding, and a drop shadow. Okay, I'm going to show you a couple of other things just quickly. So let's make this. Let's make it a link to, let's say, Google. Okay, so that's our link. Let's go back here, and I'll come back. So here's our link. So remember, I took away the highlighting. So it does show blue, okay, but there's no underlining. Now, you'll see next week when we do layout, we're going to create like little buttons or tabs that we want to give a little bit of interactivity. So when we hover over, it doesn't really do anything. It's sort of dead. But we can do that with CSS. We can do a little bit of interactivity. So let's go, what we do is we use something called a pseudo class. So what we want to do essentially is we want to change the A tag, but only in certain instances. So we're gonna style the A tag, but we're gonna say colon and then give it a pseudo class. So one of the pseudo classes is hover. So that means when the link tag is hovered over by the mouse, it'll change the link to be styled this way. So let's say we change it to be, let's change the font size to be 50 pixels. That'll be entertaining. So let's go here. So we'll refresh. And I mean, you know, probably more appropriately would be you change the color or something, but just for demo. Whoa! Okay, see? Boo! Ooh. Oh, hey, oh, play with this all day. Okay? So let's do something a little more appropriate. Let's just change the color to red. Okay? So, you know, I'm kind of showing you these silly things just to show you that, you know, CSS is just a tool set, right? Just like a hammer. And so you can do silly things like smash walls with hammers, or you can build a house with a hammer. So it just depends on how you use it. That's kind of why I'm showing you the capabilities, because there is definitely a way to not use CSS and a way to use it properly. Okay? So the other thing we can do is, so we can change the visited link or unvisited link. So let's go here. So we could change, we could say A visited, okay? And we could just say color black, or, right, black. So if we went here and then clicked here, oh, I guess, how is that? Oh, maybe it's, why isn't that working? Let's go back here. Okay, so, so it is visited now, right? Why is that taking so long? Okay, the other one we can do is, so a link, that's an unvisited link, so that would be a new link, okay? And the last one is a active, so that's when you actually click on it. So let's make it color, let's make that yellow. And let's change this from black to pink, just so we can see it. Okay. There we go. See, when I clicked, it went yellow? Okay. So, I mean, it may not seem, I mean, this is a link already, but next week, what we're going to do is we're going to use the div tags as sort of buttons or tabs. So we're going to create a tabbed navigation bar, okay? And then what we do is, so, you know, when you hover over a tab, you don't want just the text to change. You kind of want the whole tab to change. So we can do that in CSS, and that's what we're going to do next week. Okay. Let's see. Okay, I think there's probably it. Okay, so any questions on the stuff that we went through today? Yes?
Can you review how to add, because you went to Google Fonts or whatever?
Yep, sure.
I can't get mine to work.
Okay, so we went to Google Fonts, and we found one that we liked. This, I just kind of picked the first one. Let's pick one that's funny looking, so we can slant. What does that mean? Slant. Oh, here's one. Okay, so it's sort of italicized. So just go to where was the link? Quick Use. It's the middle button there, and then go down a little bit, and then it shows you instructions. So this part here, this first link part, make sure you select it all, and then copy that and go to your index and paste it. One thing is make sure the link for Google is above your style sheet link. Because if you do your local sheet first, it's going to, so remember, your web page is processed by your browser top down, and it doesn't know what's coming, right? So let's say if this was out of order, let's follow it. Let's step through it. So let's say we come to our page. It loads, so it goes here, here, here. Then it goes here. It says, oh, I have to go to a new file. It goes here. Then it comes to here, this font. It says, wait a second. I don't know what this is. You haven't told me yet. So it doesn't do anything. Then it comes back into here. Then it loads the font. But it's too late. You already tried to access it. So that's too late. So you have to make sure that this is first, so that when you get here, it knows what you're talking about. So make sure that's there, and then that should be it, really. I'll come over in a second if you still can't get it. I'll try and help you. Any other questions? No? Yes? In CSS? There is, let me see. You know what? I don't follow my own advice. I hardly ever do comments in CSS. I think it's, is it // that could work. I think it's // Let me just double check. You can. You absolutely can. I think it's // So, where's comments? You can, I guess it's /*. Okay. This is. But what about just single line comment? Okay. Well, you can use /* anyways. That'll work for sure. Sometimes it's probably a good idea to use comments. And again, I don't always follow. I'll admit, I'm the first one to admit I don't always follow my own advice. But we just started, and we hardly have a site. There's already, let's say, 20 things here. Imagine when you have a site with dozens and dozens of pages, and what happens is with CSS, you style sort of everything, and then your style kind of gets more and more refined as you're styling more specific things, and so it can come unwieldy. Like you might be looking at your page and thinking, oh, why is this red? And then there are tools in Chrome to help you, but it can be difficult. So adding comments definitely can't hurt. Any other questions? Okay, so everyone was able to get the assignment handed in. Good. I'll try and have that for you before next week. But you can mark this stuff yourself. You should know you should expect the mark that you're getting. It's not like a test where you're like, I don't know if it was right. Right? If you did each line, read each line. If you did that, you'll get that mark. Okay. Let's just quickly review our assignment for this week. So it's in the assignment 2. So for 1 mark, use your HTML file from assignment 1. Start with that. Then create a separate CSS file, so you get 1 point for doing that correctly. Link your file, 1 point for doing that. Then make sure all your CSS code is actually in that file. Style all paragraphs so the text is red. Make the font size of all H1s to be 32 pixels. Use an ID. Style one and only one of your headings to be purple and 24 pixels in size. Remove the underline from all your links. Put a black border 1 pixel wide around all of your images. Put a dashed border 3 pixels wide, yellow in color, around all your ordered lists. Using a class, override the color of 2 of your paragraphs so they're green, and increase the padding and margin of all your paragraphs to 10 pixels. And finally, make all paragraphs take up no more than half the width of the browser window. Okay? Okay. Yes.
So we have to do that exactly.
Yes. What is that? That's difficult?
No, it's just that I have this idea of what my webpage would look like. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, but I mean, next week we're going to create a web page, and you'll be much more free to. But I need to make sure that you understand, how to use the hammer, right? Which head to bang it with. So once we get that out of the way, then you can start getting creative and using your own style and because that's how you learn. When you have something in your head, an image, and you're okay, how do I make this a reality? That's kind of what I'm trying to do here. So for now, you have to match what's in my head, but next week you can match your head. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, I'll be here till 9:20 if you guys have any, if you need any help.
I have some Ryerson system questions.
Okay. Sure, I'll see if I can help. And did you figure out the thing? No? Okay, I'll come and find out. Any other questions? Let me know. And let me just stop this.